Welcome to the Secret Lives channel.
On his 40th birthday, Damien Blackwood sat atop a global empire, convinced he was untouchable. In a fit of peak arrogance, he chose to publicly humiliate his wife, tossing her humble gift aside as trash to entertain his wealthy guests. It was the most expensive mistake he would ever make. Inside that discarded, dusty box lay a secret capable of dismantling his skyscrapers and seizing his supercars. Damien thought he was married to a worthless woman, but he's about to find out she holds the deed to his entire life. The chandeliers inside the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel in New York City didn't just sparkle. They seemed to judge. Every crystal facet reflected the faces of the city's predators, tech moguls, oil tycoons, and politicians, all gathered to worship one man, Damien Blackwood. Damien stood at the center of the room, a glass of 50-year-old scotch in one hand, his other hand resting possessively on the waist of a woman who was not his wife. Isabella Sterling, the 24-year-old heiress to a shipping fortune, laughed at his jokes with a practiced, throaty tilt of her head. She was shimmering in gold silk. In the corner, near the service entrance, stood Lydia Blackwood. Lydia wore a dress she had bought 5 years ago, a simple navy sheath that had seen better days. She clutched a small, clumsily wrapped package against her chest. Her knuckles were white. She watched her husband, the CEO of Vertex Dynamics, holding court. They had been married for 12 years. For the last 5, she had been a ghost in his house. For the last 2, she had been a punchline. "Go on," a voice whispered behind her. It was heavy with mock sympathy. Lydia turned to see Isabella Sterling sliding up to her, smelling of tuberose and arrogance. "Give him his present, darling. We're all dying to see what the housewife got the man who has everything." The room quieted. Damien had spotted her, his handsome face, usually sharp and calculating, twisted into a smirk. He didn't walk to her. He waited for her to walk to him. It was a power play he used in boardrooms, and now he was using it on his wife. Lydia walked the gauntlet. The crowd parted, whispers hissing like steam. "That's her? She looks like his maid. I heard he's filing next week." Lydia reached him. She looked up into the eyes of the man she had supported when he was coding in a basement, eating instant noodles she paid for with her waitressing tips. "Happy birthday, Damien," she whispered, her voice trembling. She held out the box. It was small, wrapped in brown paper, tied with a piece of twine. In a room full of Rolexes and Cartier, it looked like garbage. Damien took it with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. He held it up for the room to see. "Well," he announced, his voice booming, "let's see what 12 years of marriage amounts to." He tore the paper. Inside was a wooden music box. It was old, the varnish peeling, one of the corners chipped. It wasn't an antique. It was just old. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Isabella covered her mouth, her eyes dancing with malice. "A music box?" Damien asked, staring at it. "Did you pick this up at a yard sale on your way here, Lydia?" "It belonged to my grandfather," Lydia said, her voice barely audible. "He wanted you to have it. He said when the time was right, you'd know the tune." Damien laughed. It was a cold, barking sound. "Your grandfather, the crazy old mechanic who died owing the bank 3 mortgages. You're giving me a rusted toy from a dead failure. It's not a toy, Damien. It's an insult." Damien snapped, his smile vanishing. "I built a $50 billion company, Lydia. I just acquired the rights to the Manhattan skyline's sensory grid. And you bring me trash." He looked at the crowd, seeking their approval. He got it. They were smiling, waiting for the kill. Damien raised the music box. "Damien, don't!" Lydia pleaded, reaching out. He tossed it. He didn't just drop it. He threw it over his shoulder, towards the open fireplace behind him. The box hit the marble hearth with a sickening crack and skidded towards the flames. The lid shattered. "Get out," Damien said, turning back to Isabella, "and take your trash with you." Lydia didn't scream. She didn't cry. Not yet. She scrambled past the laughing billionaires, dropping to her knees on the hearth. She grabbed the broken box just before the fire caught the wood. The metal mechanism inside was hot, searing her palm, but she held it tight. She stood up, clutching the broken pieces to her chest. She looked at Damien one last time. He wasn't even looking at her. He was toasting with Isabella. Lydia turned and walked out. The silence that followed her wasn't out of respect. It was the silence of people who had just watched a public execution and enjoyed it. But as she exited the Pierre Hotel into the freezing New York rain, Lydia looked down at the broken box in her hands. The fall had dislodged the false bottom her grandfather had installed 50 years ago. Sticking out of the splintered wood wasn't a music cylinder. It was a micro SD card, encased in a tube of heavy lead, and a small folded piece of parchment with a wax seal. The United States Patent Office, 1974. Lydia didn't know it yet, but the trash she was holding was the kill switch for Vertex Dynamics. The divorce papers arrived the next morning at 6 a.m. They were delivered not by a courier, but by a team of private security guards, led by Damien's head of legal, a shark of a man named Marcus Vane, Isabella's uncle. Lydia was sitting on the floor of the guest bedroom, the only room she was allowed to sleep in lately, surrounded by boxes. She hadn't slept. The music box sat on the nightstand, glued back together as best as she could manage. The parchment and the SD card were hidden in her bra. "Mrs. Blackwood," Marcus Vane said, stepping into the room without knocking. Two large men stood behind him. "Mr. Blackwood requires the premises vacated by noon. Here is the settlement offer." He tossed a thick envelope onto the bed. Lydia didn't touch it. "He's kicking me out of the house we bought together?" "Correction," Marcus sneered, adjusting his silk tie. "The house he bought. You are listed as a dependent. The prenup you signed—" "I never signed a prenup," Lydia said, standing up. "We didn't have money for a prenup when we got married. We had nothing." Marcus smiled, a thin reptilian expression. He pulled a document from his briefcase. "You signed this 3 years ago, during the restructuring of the company. You thought it was a tax form. It was a post-nuptial agreement waiving all rights to Vertex assets and real estate in exchange for a lump sum." Lydia felt the blood drain from her face. She remembered that day. Damien had been so sweet, so stressed. "Just sign this, honey. It keeps the auditors off our back." She had trusted him. "The lump sum," Marcus continued, "is $50,000. Generous, considering." "50,000? Lydia laughed, a dry, hysterical sound. "Vertex is worth $50 billion. I worked 2 jobs to pay for the servers when he started the company. I wrote the initial marketing copy." "Unsubstantiated," Marcus said, checking his watch. "You have 4 hours. Anything left behind will be incinerated. Oh, and Damien specifically asked for the garbage he threw out last night. He wants to burn it personally to ensure no bad luck remains." Lydia's hand went instinctively to her chest where the SD card lay against her skin. "I threw it away," she lied, "in a dumpster on 5th Avenue. Marcus narrowed his eyes. He signaled the guards. "Check her bags." They tore through her meager belongings. They ripped open her suitcase, dumping her clothes on the floor. They checked the pockets of her coats. They didn't check her person. "It's not here," one guard grunted. Marcus looked at Lydia with pure disdain. "You're a pathetic woman, Lydia. Damien is going to marry Isabella. They're going to be a power couple on the cover of Time. You're going to be a trivia question. Who was Damien Blackwood's first mistake?" "Get out," Lydia whispered. "We'll wait in the hall." "Noon, Lydia." When the door clicked shut, Lydia collapsed. She wanted to scream. She wanted to break something. But then she remembered the parchment. She pulled the folded paper from her bra. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. It was old, smelling of cedar and tobacco. It wasn't just a patent. It was a deed of trust. It was dated October 14th, 1974. "I, Elias Halloway, Lydia's grandfather, hereby grant the usage of the Genesis logic solely to my bloodline. Any commercial application of the logic without the direct consent of a Halloway heir constitutes a breach of contract, resulting in the immediate reversion of all derived intellectual property to the Halloway estate. Lydia frowned. Genesis logic? She had never heard of it. Her grandfather fixed watches and toasters. He wasn't a computer scientist. She looked at the micro SD card. It was modern, much newer than the paper. Her grandfather had died 6 months ago. He must have put the card in there right before he passed. She needed a computer, but Damien had monitored all her devices. If she plugged this into her laptop, Vertex security would know instantly. She packed her bag, just clothes, the broken box, and a framed photo of her parents. She took the check for $50,000. She would need it. Not to live, but to fight. At 11:55 a.m., Lydia walked out of the Greenwich mansion. It was raining again. Damien's security team watched her leave, smirking. As the heavy iron gates slammed shut behind her, her phone buzzed. It was a notification from a gossip app, a video titled, "Billionaire Damien Blackwood dumps wife and trash at birthday bash." She watched the video. It showed Damien throwing the box. The comments were brutal. "LeMayo, look at her face. Gold digger got owned. Isabella is way hotter." Lydia wiped the rain from her screen. She scrolled down to a comment with 0 likes, posted 2 minutes ago by a user named clockmaker_00. The comment read, "The fool didn't check the gears. The spring is wound tight. Check the patent number, Mrs. Blackwood, 88429 Alpha." Lydia froze. She looked around the empty street. Who was clockmaker_00? And how did they know she had the patent? She hailed a cab. "Where to, lady?" "The public library," Lydia said. "The one with the worst internet connection in the city." She wasn't going to run. She was going to find out what her grandfather had really left her, and then she was going to burn Damien's world to the ground. The Queen's Public Library was smelling of wet wool and old paper. Lydia sat in the farthest corner, huddled over a public terminal that looked like it was running Windows 95. She pulled her hood down low. Her bank account had already been frozen. Marcus Vane worked fast. But she had managed to withdraw $2,000 in cash before the lock hit. She inserted the SD card into a cheap card reader she'd bought at a drugstore. The screen flickered. A command prompt popped up, black and green. No fancy interface. Just text. Genesis logic detected. User, Elias Halloway. Status, dormant. Enter passphrase. Lydia stared at the blinking cursor. Passphrase. She thought of her grandfather, Elias. He was a man of grease and gears, always tinkering in his garage with radios and old clocks. He hated computers, or so she thought. "When the time is right, you'll know the tune," he had said. The music box. The tune it played before Damien smashed it was Greensleeves. Lydia typed Greensleeves. Access denied. She frowned. She tried Lydia. Family, Vertex. Access denied. 1 attempt remaining. Data wipe imminent. Her heart hammered against her ribs. If she guessed wrong, the evidence would be gone forever. She closed her eyes, picturing the music box. It was a carousel. Horses. But one horse was different. It had a broken leg that Elias never fixed. He called it the Lame King. She typed, "Lame King." The screen went black. For a horrifying second, she thought she had wiped it. Then files began to cascade down the screen almost and faster than she could read. Videos, schematics, lines of code, and emails. Thousands of emails between Damien Blackwood and Elias Halloway. Lydia clicked on a video file dated 12 years ago. The grainy footage showed a younger Damien, desperate, sitting in Elias's garage. "I can't figure out the stabilizing loop, Elias. The investors are going to pull out. I need the code." Elias, wiping grease from his hands, shook his head. "The code is dangerous, son. It learns too fast. It's not for sale. It's for the public trust. If you sell it, you enslave the world." Damien grabbed Elias's arm. "I won't sell it. I swear. I just need to show them it works. We'll protect it together." Lydia gasped. The foundation of Vertex Dynamics, the sentient city algorithm that ran traffic lights, hospitals, and stock markets globally, wasn't Damien's invention. He had stolen it from her grandfather under false pretenses. But there was something else. A file named Doomsday_clock.exe. She opened the README file. "If you are reading this, I am dead, and Damien has betrayed the trust. The Genesis logic was designed with a lifespan. Without the daily cipher keys generated by this drive, the algorithm will begin to cannibalize itself. It will fail, and when it fails, Vertex falls." Lydia looked at the date on the file. The lifespan was set for 15 years. That was next week. A shadow fell over her desk. Lydia snapped the laptop shut, her heart leaping into her throat. She spun around. Standing there wasn't a security guard. It was an old man in a trench coat that had seen better decades. He had wild white hair and thick Coke bottle glasses. He held a flip phone in his hand. "You're making a lot of noise on the network, Mrs. Blackwood," the man rasped. "Clockmaker_00 sends his regards." Lydia clutched her bag. "Who are you?" "I'm Walter," the man said, offering a hand that was missing a pinky finger. "Walter O'Connell. I built the box your husband smashed, and if we don't move in 30 seconds, the men in the black SUVs outside are going to turn us both into missing persons reports." Lydia looked out the window. Sure enough, 2 black Cadillacs were idling at the curb. Marcus Vane's goons. "Where do we go?" Lydia asked. Walter grinned, showing gold teeth. "To the only place Damien can't track, the subway." 3 days passed. Damien Blackwood was on top of the world. He stood on the balcony of the Vertex Tower, looking down at Manhattan. The city was literally pulsing with his tech. Every streetlight, every subway turnstile, every ATM was running on Vertex Core. His engagement to Isabella Sterling was trending #1 worldwide. The stock was at an all-time high of $4,500 a share. "Sir?" Damien turned. Marcus Vane was standing by the glass doors, looking uncharacteristically pale. "What is it, Marcus? Did we find Lydia?" "No, sir. She's vanished. We tracked her to a library in Queens, but she slipped out the back. But that's not the problem." Damien sipped his espresso. "Then what is?" "The core, sir. It's lagging." Damien laughed. "Lagging? We have quantum processors. Nothing lags. It's not hardware, it's the code. Since this morning, the prediction algorithms are off by 0.04%. It sounds small, sir, but it's compounding. Traffic lights in Tokyo went out of sync for 10 seconds. A hospital in London lost patient data for a minute." Damien frowned. "Run a diagnostic." "We did. The system is returning an error message we've never seen before." Marcus held out a tablet. On the screen, flashing in red, was the text, "Insert Disc 2. Please play the tune." Damien dropped his cup. It shattered on the floor, echoing the sound of the music box breaking. "That old fool!" Damien hissed. "Elias booby-trapped it." "We need that box, Damien," Marcus said, his voice tight. "The pieces you threw in the fire." "I burned them," Damien said, pacing. "I watched the wood turn to ash." "The mechanism was metal," Marcus countered. "Lydia took the mechanism. If she figures out what it is—" "She's a waitress, Marcus. She's a nobody," Damien roared, his face turning red. "She doesn't know code. She barely knows how to use an iPhone." "She has help," Marcus said. "Our facial recognition picked up a known associate near the library. Walter O'Connell." Damien froze. "Walter? He's alive? He's been off the grid for 20 years. He's alive, and he's with your wife." Damien walked to the window. The fear was cold in his stomach, a feeling he hadn't felt since he was poor. If the core crashed, the world would stop. Planes would fall, grids would fail, and he would be liable for trillions. he would be in prison for life. "Find them," Damien whispered. "Put a bounty on her head. $5 million. I don't care if it's legal. I want that drive." Meanwhile, 40 feet underground, in a decommissioned subway maintenance tunnel, Lydia was undergoing a transformation. Walter's lair was a tech wonderland built into the damp concrete. Servers hummed alongside rusted tracks. "You need to understand, Lydia," Walter said, typing furiously on 3 keyboards at once. Damien didn't just steal a product. He stole a philosophy. Elias wanted Genesis to heal the world. Damien turned it into a leash. Lydia was cutting her hair. She stood in front of a cracked mirror, shears in hand. She hacked off her long, chestnut waves until they were a sharp, jagged bob. She dyed it pitch black with cheap box dye. "I don't care about the philosophy right now, Walter," she said, her voice hard. "I care about hurting him. He took my life. He humiliated me." "Revenge is a dirty fuel," Walter warned, "but it burns hot." "Is the handshake ready?" Lydia asked. "Ready, but you need to deliver it personally. The system requires biometric authorization from a Halloway. You have to be within 100 feet of the main server at Vertex Tower to initiate the override." Lydia looked at the map of Vertex Tower. "The penthouse, that's where the server access is. During the engagement gala tomorrow night." "It's suicide," Walter said. "The place will be swarming with security. Marcus Vane will shoot you on sight." Lydia turned from the mirror. She didn't look like the scared wife in the navy dress anymore. She looked like a weapon. "He won't shoot me," Lydia said, "because I'm not going in as Lydia Blackwood." She threw the $50,000 settlement check onto the table. "Walter, you said you know a forger who can make me a new identity. The best in the city." "Good," Lydia said. "Make me a countess, a foreign investor. Make me someone Damien will want to impress. He'll recognize you," Walter argued. Lydia picked up a pair of colored contact lenses and a sleek, high-collared dress she had thrifted and altered. She applied a dark, aggressive lipstick. She stood differently, spine straight, chin up, radiating cold disdain. "Damien never really looked at me, Walter," she said softly. "Even when we were married, he only saw what I could do for him. If I walk in there as a woman who can give him more power, he won't see his wife. He'll see a deal. And if he catches you—" Lydia touched the cold metal of the drive, now worn as a pendant around her neck, hidden under the silk. "Then I smash the drive," she said, "and we all go down together." The Vertex Tower Engagement Gala was the event of the decade. The entire top floor had been transformed into a hanging garden of Babylon. Champagne flowed from ice sculptures shaped like the Vertex logo. Damien Blackwood was smiling, but his eyes were darting nervously to his phone every 10 seconds. The glitches were getting worse. Earlier that afternoon, the Vertex navigational grid had briefly routed all southbound traffic in Chicago northbound. It was chaos. The stock had dropped 12% in an hour. He needed this night to be perfect to reassure the board. "Stop checking the ticker," Isabella hissed, pinching his arm. She was wearing a diamond necklace worth more than the GDP of a small island nation. "You're making people nervous." "The system is unstable, Isabella," Damien muttered. "If it crashes tonight—" Suddenly the room went silent. The heavy oak doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open. A woman walked in. She was stunning. She wore a floor-length dress of blood-red velvet that clung to her silhouette like a second skin. Her hair was jet black, cut in a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed a face of porcelain pale perfection. Her eyes were a piercing, unnatural violet, contacts, and her lips were painted a dark crimson. She didn't walk. She glided. "Who is that?" Isabella asked, her jealousy flaring instantly. I don't know," Damien said. He was mesmerized. The woman walked straight towards them. Security stepped forward to intercept her, but she flashed a black invitation card, a forgery Walter had spent 20 hours perfecting. She stopped in front of Damien. She was wearing 4-inch heels, making her almost eye level with him. Mr. Blackwood, she said. Her voice was lower, huskier, accented with a vague, untraceable European lilt. I am Alexandra Kovacs, representing the Orion Consortium. Damien's eyebrows shot up. Orion was a shadow group of investors rumored to have unlimited capital. I wasn't aware Orion was sending a delegate, Damien said, straightening his tie. We usually don't, Alexandra, Lydia said coolly. But we noticed your technical difficulties in Chicago. We thought you might need a lifeline. Damien flinched. Minor glitches. Under control. Is it? She smirked. It was a cruel, knowing smile. Or is your Genesis logic rejecting the host? Damien froze. Genesis logic. No one outside the inner circle knew that name. We should talk, Damien said, his voice dropping. Privately. Damien, Isabella protested. It's our engagement party. Go buy another island, Isabella, Damien snapped, not looking at her. Miss Kovacs, follow me. Lydia felt a surge of nausea mixed with adrenaline. He didn't know her. He was looking right into the eyes of the woman he had slept next to for 12 years. And he didn't see his wife. He only saw money. He only saw a deal. Walter was right, she thought bitterly. I was never a person to him. I was furniture. She followed him to the private elevator. Vane, formerly Marcus, stepped in with them, his hand hovering near his jacket pocket. Vane was suspicious. He stared at Lydia, analyzing her. I haven't seen you at the summits, Miss Kovacs, Vane said slowly. I don't attend summits, Lydia replied, boring her eyes into his. I attend funerals, and if you don't fix your code, this company is having one tomorrow. The elevator dinged. The penthouse. This was the inner sanctum. One wall was entirely glass, overlooking the city. In the center of the room stood the server monolith, a black pillar of humming servers that housed the master node of Vertex. Show me the fix, Damien demanded, turning to her. You said you have a patch. Lydia walked to the console. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought the velvet of her dress would ripple. She needed to get the drive plugged in. The patch is hardware, she said, reaching for the pendant around her neck. A bypass key. She unclasped the necklace. The micro SD card, encased in its silver setting, dangled in the air. Damien frowned. He stepped closer. He looked at the pendant. He looked at her hands. And then he saw it. A tiny, faint scar on her left thumb. A scar she had gotten from slicing a bagel for him on their first anniversary. Damien's eyes widened. The color drained from his face. Lydia, he whispered. The ride up to the penthouse was a study in suffocating silence. The private elevator, lined with brushed gold and mirrors, hummed softly, a stark contrast to the cacophony of the gala they had just left. Damien Blackwood stood in the center, checking his watch for the third time in a minute. His knuckles were white. Beside him, Marcus Vane stood like a coil of razor wire, his eyes fixed unblinkingly on the woman who called herself Alexandra Kovacs. Lydia, currently Alexandra, stood with her back to the mirrored wall. She forced her breathing to remain slow and even, despite the fact that her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She caught her own reflection in the gold panels, the severe black bob, the violet contact lenses, the blood-red velvet dress that cost more than her father's car. She looked like a predator. She felt like prey. I must say, Vane's voice broke the silence, dry and scratching. I pride myself on knowing every major player in the tech equity space, yet the Orion Consortium remains opaque, and you, Miss Kovacs, are a ghost. Lydia didn't blink. She turned her head slowly, channeling every ounce of disdain she had seen Isabella Sterling use over the years. Ghosts are necessary in our line of work, Mr. Vane. If you see us coming, we aren't doing our job. And what is your job, exactly? Vane pressed, stepping closer. Because right now, it feels like you're walking into a burning building with a bucket of gasoline. Enough, Marcus, Damien snapped, wiping sweat from his brow. She says she has a hardware patch. If the Chicago grid goes down, The SEC halts trading on Vertex by morning. I don't care if she's a ghost or a goblin. I need the fix. The elevator chimed. A soft, pleasant female voice announced, "Penthouse level, Vertex core access." The doors slid open, revealing Damien's sanctuary. It was a space designed to intimidate. The walls were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a 360-degree view of a rain-swept New York City, a city that was currently running on Damien's software. In the center of the room, bathed in cool blue light, stood the monolith. It was a server rack, but that was like calling a Ferrari a cart. It was a towering pillar of obsidian glass and pulsing LEDs, housing the masternode of the Vertex system. This was the brain of the beast, the place where the stolen Genesis logic lived, enslaved to churn out profit. "Impressive," Lydia said, stepping out. Her heels clicked sharply on the black marble floor. "You built a temple to yourself, Damien." Damien didn't catch the slip, the use of his first name without the honorific. He was too focused on the screens surrounding the monolith. They were flashing orange warnings. Latency detected. Sector 4, unstable. Prediction algorithm failing. "The patch," Damien demanded, holding out his hand. "Give it to me. My engineers will install it." Lydia shook her head. She walked past him, straight toward the console. "Your engineers caused this, Mr. Blackwood. They tried to splice quantum processing onto a logic core that wasn't designed for it. The code is rejecting the graft. It needs a manual override. From the source." She reached the main terminal. It was a sleek, buttonless interface. "Step away from the console," Vane warned, his hand moving inside his tuxedo jacket. The threat was unmistakable. "Let her work!" Damien yelled at Vane. He turned to Lydia. "Do it, whatever you need to do. Just get the green lights back on." Lydia's hand went to her neck. She unclasped the silver pendant. The heavy weight of the lead-encased drive fell into her palm. It was cold. She looked at the port on the console. It was a standard interface, unchanged from the original schematics her grandfather had drawn in 1974. Damien had changed the shell, but he hadn't changed the heart. He didn't understand it enough to change it. She took a breath. For Elias. She jammed the drive into the port. The room froze. For a second, nothing happened. Then the blue lights on the monolith turned a violent, throbbing crimson. A low, bass-heavy hum began to vibrate through the floor, shaking the expensive art on the walls. External drive detected. Analysis, legacy code. Protocol, Genesis reversion. Identity verification required. Damien stepped forward, confused. Genesis reversion? What is that? That's not a patch. Lydia didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the screen. Her fingers flew across the holographic keyboard. User Halloway bloodline. Passphrase? It's asking for a passphrase, Damien said, panic rising in his voice. "Miss Kovac, what are you doing?" Lydia typed, "Lame King." The screens flashed white, a blinding, searing light that forced Damien and Vane to shield their eyes. When the light faded, the interface had changed. The sleek, modern Vertex UI was gone. In its place was a retro command line interface, green text on black background. Simple, archaic, powerful. And then, the sound began. It started as a whisper from the surround sound speakers hidden in the walls. A simple mechanical melody. Ding, ding, dying. Damien's face went slack. The blood drained from his cheeks so fast he looked like a corpse. He knew that tune. He had mocked it 3 days ago. He had laughed at it while he threw a wooden box into a fire. "Greensleeves?" he whispered. Lydia turned around slowly. The game was over. She reached up and peeled the black wig from her head. Her natural brown hair, choppy and uneven from the kitchen shear haircut, fell around her face. She blinked hard, popping the violet contact lens out of her right eye, then her left, revealing her warm, honey-brown eyes. The eyes that had looked at him with love for 12 years. "Hello, Damien," she said. Her voice wasn't the husky, accented purr of Alexandra Kovac. It was Lydia. Damien staggered back, hitting the glass wall. "Lydia?" He looked at her, his brain refusing to process the image. The glamorous countess. Was his wife, the woman he had called a bad investment in front of the world? "No," he stammered. You're in Queens. You're nobody." "I was nobody to you," Lydia said, her voice trembling with the release of 1,000 suppressed screams. "I was the woman who paid your rent. I was the woman who held your head when you cried about failing. I was the granddaughter of the man whose genius you stole." "Stole?" Vane snarled. He had pulled the gun now, a sleek, silenced pistol pointed directly at Lydia's chest. "Cancel the command. Pull the drive." "I can't," Lydia said, staring down the barrel of the gun. She didn't flinch. She was beyond fear. "The handshake is complete. The logic is self-replicating now. It's overwriting your proprietary locks. It's stripping the copyright." On the massive screens behind her, the chaos was visible. A map of the world appeared. Thousands of nodes, New York, London, Tokyo, Berlin, were turning from vertex red to a soft, pulsing green. Text scrolled rapidly across the center monitor, releasing source code to public domain. 20%. 30%. "You're destroying it," Damien screamed, lunging toward her but stopping short of the gun. "Do you have any idea what that code is worth? It's the singularity. It's the future. And you're just broadcasting it? For free." "It was never meant to be sold, Damien," Lydia yelled back. "Grandpa told you that. It was meant to optimize energy, to heal, to help. You turned it into a spy tool. You used it to manipulate markets and track people. You perverted it. I made it powerful," Damien roared, tears of rage springing to his eyes. "Elias was a tinkerer. He was a failure. I took his little toy and I built an empire. I did it for us, Lydia. Don't you see? I wanted to give you the world." "You didn't give me the world," Lydia said softly. "You threw me out of it." She gestured to the screen. "Stock alert, Vertex Dynamics, VTX. Halted. Price, $0. It's gone, Damien, all of it. The stock is worthless because the product is now free. Anyone can use it. Anyone can build with it. You don't own the future anymore." Damien fell to his knees. He looked at the floor, watching the reflection of the red emergency lights pulse like a dying heartbeat. "My legacy," he whimpered. "Your legacy is a lie," Lydia said. "That's enough," Vane hissed. His face was purple. "I'm not going to prison for this. I'm going to kill you, wipe the servers, and claim it was a cyber-terrorist attack. We can spin this." He raised the gun higher, aiming for her head. "Say goodbye, Mrs. Blackwood." Lydia closed her eyes. She heard the tune of Greensleeves reaching its crescendo. She had done it. She had won. Ding! The elevator doors slid open behind Vane. "Drop the weapon, federal agents!" Vane spun around, but he was too slow. A deafening bang echoed in the room, not from Vane's gun, but from the lead agent's tactical rifle. Vane screamed, dropping his pistol as a bullet shattered his shoulder. He collapsed to the marble floor, writhing in pain. A dozen FBI agents in body armor swarmed the room. "Hands! Show me your hands!" Damien didn't move. He stayed on his knees, catatonic. Behind the wall of agents, a familiar figure shuffled in. Walter O'Connell, wearing a suit that was 3 sizes too big for him, holding a thick sheaf of yellow documents. Walter walked past the agents, past the bleeding Vane, and stopped in front of Damien. He looked down at the broken billionaire. "Elias says hello," Walter rasped. He dropped the documents on Damien's lap. They were the original 1974 patent filings, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Genesis Logic belonged to the Halloway estate. An agent pulled Lydia aside. "Mrs. Blackwood, are you injured?" Lydia opened her eyes. She looked at Vane, bleeding on the floor. She looked at the screens, which now read, "Upload complete, system open," and she looked at Damien. An agent was hauling Damien to his feet. He looked small. The tuxedo that had fit him so perfectly hours ago now seemed to hang off him. He looked like a child playing dress-up. As they cuffed his hands behind his back, Damien looked up. His eyes locked with Lydia's. There was no anger left in them, only a vast, bottomless confusion. "Why?" he croaked. "I offered you $50,000. I would have given you millions if you asked. Why burn it all down?" Lydia walked up to him. She stood toe to toe with the man she had vowed to love forever. "You threw a box into a fire, Damien," she whispered. "You thought it was trash because it was made of wood and glue. You didn't check inside. You didn't check the value. You just saw the packaging." She leaned in close. "That's what you did to me. You looked at me and saw a waitress. You saw a housewife. You didn't check inside. You didn't realize that I was the one holding the keys to your kingdom. Lydia, please," Damien sobbed, his composure finally shattering completely. "Don't let them take me. I'm scared. I can't do this alone." Lydia looked at his weeping face. A part of her, the part that remembered the boy in the basement eating noodles, wanted to reach out, wanted to comfort him. But that boy was dead. He had died the moment he sold his soul for a stock price. "You're not alone, Damien," Lydia said, stepping back as the agents began to drag him towards the elevator. "You have your memories. I hope they keep you warm." She turned her back on him. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. Below, the lights of New York seemed to flicker, adjusting to the new rhythm of the code. The chaotic, frantic pulse of the vertex system was gone, replaced by a steady, harmonic flow. The city was breathing easier. Behind her, the elevator doors closed, cutting off Damien's wails. Lydia took a deep breath. For the first time in 2 years, the knot in her chest was gone. "Nice work, kid," Walter said, coming up beside her and handing her the silver pendant she had pulled from the machine. "You think he learned his lesson?" Lydia looked at the pendant. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but the world did." Winter had come early to upstate New York. The Federal Correctional Institution at Otisville was a sprawling complex of grey concrete and razor wire, a place stripped of colour and devoid of hope. For Damien Blackwood, who had spent the last decade surrounded by Italian marble and velvet, the sensory deprivation was a torture worse than the confinement. The air here smelled of industrial bleach and boiled cabbage. The lights were a constant headache-inducing fluorescent buzz. 6 months. That's how long it had been since the lights went out at Vertex Tower. Damien sat in the visitation room, his hands clasped on the stainless steel table. He looked 20 years older. His hair, once thick and dyed a youthful raven black, was now thinning and shocking white at the temples. His skin was sallow, the result of bad food and zero sunlight. He wasn't wearing an Armani tuxedo. He was wearing a jumpsuit the color of a dirty bandage, with his inmate number stenciled on the chest. The heavy steel door buzzed open. Damien straightened up, adjusting his collar instinctively, a phantom limb of his old vanity. Lydia walked in. She didn't look like the scared wife in the navy dress. She didn't look like the icy countess in red velvet. She looked free. She wore a thick wool coat, a simple cream sweater, and jeans. Her hair was growing out, soft waves framing a face that had regained its color. She carried a leather satchel. She sat down opposite him. The plexiglass barrier between them was thick, scratched by the wedding rings of 1,000 other visitors. Damien picked up the receiver. His hand shook. "You came," he said, his voice raspy. "I didn't think you would." Lydia picked up her phone. Her eyes were sad, but clear. "I have the final decree, Damien. The lawyers said you were refusing to sign." Damien let out a jagged, bitter laugh. "The divorce? That's why you're here. To officially throw me away." "To close the chapter," Lydia corrected gently. "It's over, Damien. Isabella is gone. The board has dissolved. The assets are frozen or seized. There is nothing left to hold on to. Isabella!" Damien spat the name like a curse. "She released a statement. Did you see? Said she was a victim of my coercive control. She's on a yacht in the Mediterranean right now with a duke." He leaned closer to the glass, his eyes feverish. "But you were the smart one, Lydia. You were always the smart one. Damien, listen to me, he hissed, cutting her off. He looked around nervously at the guards, then lowered his voice. I know what you did. You reverted the code, but you didn't delete the source, did you? You have the master key. The Holloway Protocol. Lydia sighed, a sound of profound exhaustion. Even here, in a cage, he was still running the hustle. I don't have it, Damien. Don't lie to me, he whispered urgently. The patent is in your name now. The royalties alone. If we license it to just the G7 nations, we're talking billions. I can get out of here, Lydia. I can hire the best appellate team in the country. We can rebuild, not Vertex, something better. Something they can't touch. Just tell me you kept the key. Lydia looked at him for a long time. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the absolute inability to understand a world where money wasn't the oxygen. There are no royalties, Damien, she said softly. Damien blinked. What? I didn't license the software, Lydia said. I released it. The silence on the line was heavy. Released it? Damien repeated, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. Open source, Lydia explained. GPL license. It belongs to the public domain now. The code for the traffic grids, the hospitals, the energy stabilizers. It's all free. Anyone can use it. Anyone can inspect it. No back doors, no profit margins. Damien's face crumpled. It wasn't anger. It was horror. You gave it away, he stammered. $50 billion of intellectual property. You just handed it to the world? It was never ours, Damien. It was Grandpa's gift to humanity. I just delivered the package a few decades late. You're insane, Damien whispered, tears spilling down his cheeks. You're stupid and you're insane. You could have been a queen. We could have ruled everything. I don't want to be a queen, Lydia said, sliding the divorce papers through the document slot. I just want to sleep at night. I want to look in the mirror and like what I see. Can you say the same? Damien looked at the papers. Then he looked at his reflection in the plexiglass, a hollow, broken man in a beige jumpsuit. He realized then, with a crushing finality, that he wasn't crying for the money. He was crying because he knew she was right. He picked up the pen. His hand trembled as he signed the line next to the X. Damien Blackwood. The signature was weak, barely legible. He pushed the papers back. Lydia, he said, his voice small. The box. The one I smashed. Lydia paused as she packed the papers into a bag. Yes? I'm sorry, he wept. I'm so sorry. It was a nice gift. Lydia looked at him one last time. She didn't offer false forgiveness. She didn't offer him hope. She offered him the truth. It was the only honest thing you ever owned, she said. She hung up the phone. She walked out of the room, leaving the man who had the world at his feet to sit alone in the cold. The bell above the door of the Timekeeper's Rest chimed softly, announcing Lydia's return. The shop was a sanctuary of warmth. It smelled of sawdust, old clock oil, and strong coffee. The walls were lined with hundreds of clocks, cuckoos from the Black Forest, grandfathers from England, mantel clocks from France, all ticking in a chaotic, comforting rhythm. Walter O'Connell was at the main workbench, struggling with the mainspring of a 1920s pocket watch. You back, kid? He grunted, not looking up. I'm back, Walter, Lydia said, locking the door against the winter chill. How was he? Small, Lydia said. He looked very small. Walter nodded. Prisons have a way of shrinking giants. Coffee is in the pot. Lydia poured herself a mug and walked to her own workbench in the back corner. Sitting there, under the warm glow of the articulate lamp, was the music box. It wasn't perfect. The scars were visible. You could see the lines where Lydia had painstakingly glued the splintered wood back together. You could see where the varnish was slightly darker in the spots that had been scorched by the fire. But it was solid. It was strong. Lydia sat down. She ran her fingers over the rough wood. She wound the key at the back. Click, click, click. She flipped the brass latch. The cylinder began to turn. The metal teeth plucked the comb. Alas, my love, you do me wrong, to cast me off discourteously. The melody of green sleeves filled the shop. It was a simple mechanical sound, miles away from the digital perfection of the Vertex servers. It was flawed and beautiful. As the song reached the bridge, a small click sounded from the bottom of the box. The repair Lydia had done on the false bottom held. The secret compartment popped open. Lydia reached in. The SD card was long gone, buried in an FBI evidence locker. But Walter had told her there was something else, something thin, slipped under the velvet lining, that the fire hadn't touched. She used a pair of tweezers to pull it out. It was a photograph, a Polaroid, yellowed with age. It showed two people sitting on the hood of a rusted Honda Civic, eating a pizza from a cardboard box. Damien was 22. His hair was messy, his t-shirt was stained, and he was laughing with his head thrown back. Lydia was next to him, looking at him with a look of absolute adoration. They looked poor. They looked exhausted. They looked incredibly happy. Lydia flipped the photo over. On the back, in Damien's messy scrawl, handwriting she hadn't seen in years, was a note. It was dated the day he gave the box to her grandfather to repair, 10 years ago. To Elias, keep this safe for me. I'm scared, old man. Things are moving too fast. If I ever lose my way, if I ever forget that she is the only thing that matters, make me listen to the song. Remind me who I am. Lydia read the note 3 times, her breath hitched in her throat. He had known. Deep down, before the billions, before the greed rot set in, Damien had known he was losing himself. He had left himself a lifeline in this box, and then, in his arrogance, he had smashed the lifeline to pieces. You okay, Lydia? Walter asked gently from across the room. Lydia looked at the photo. She looked at the boy who had loved her, the boy who had died long before Damien Blackwood went to prison. She stood up and walked over to the cast-iron pot-belly stove that heated the shop. The fire was crackling behind the grate. I'm okay, Walter, she said. She opened the grate. The heat flushed against her face. She held the photo for a second longer, mourning the boy in the picture, not the man in the cell. Then she tossed it in. The flames caught the edge of the Polaroid. The chemical paper bubbled and turned black. The image of the laughing couple curled up, turned to smoke, and vanished up the chimney. Lydia closed the grate. She dusted off her hands. I'm done with the past, she said. She walked back to her bench. There was a broken carriage clock from 1890 waiting for her. The gears were jammed, the face was cracked, but with a little time and a little patience, it would run again. Lydia Blackwood was gone. Lydia Halloway picked up her screwdriver and got to work. Damien Blackwood spent the rest of his life chasing a fortune he could never catch, locked behind bars of his own making. He learned too late that when you trade your humanity for power, you end up with neither. Lydia proved that the most valuable things in this world aren't stocks or bonds. They are loyalty, heritage, and the courage to walk away when you're not valued. She fixed what he broke. Not just the box, but her life. What do you think? Would you have released the code for free like Lydia, or would you have kept the billions? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. We post new dramas every week. Thanks for watching, and remember, never throw away a gift made with love.